You must not leave the game.
Check the binds.
What do you think Norwich tastes like?
We are here to talk about 100 Candles, which is also known as the 100 Candles game. And this is an anthology movie with a kind of a wraparound story, which is the actual 100 Candles conceit here. So what is the conceit, you might be saying? Well, essentially it focuses on a group of friends that are in some type of dilapidated old building and doing a kind of challenge, a kind of supernatural challenge, so to speak, where they tell each other ghost stories surrounded by 100 candles, and then have to kind of go into this room and look at a mirror, etc. Now, each of the stories that they tell obviously would be one of the anthologies, but this wraparound story kind of has its own story as well. Now, what can I say in favour? What works with 100 Candles? I'm not a big fan of anthology movies because I don't like movies that don't have a lot of characterisation. One of the big things for me is I like to have characters that are, well developed. And you can't really do that with anthologies because obviously you have a shorter running time. That being said, there are some anthology movies that I still do enjoy, but I do appreciate that obviously you simply can't do that really, or very rarely can you do that with an anthology film. However, so what can I say that works with this particular anthology? I would say the production value for a start, and this anthology seems particularly good. Nearly all of the stories, maybe bar one, seem like they have a good level of production value here. You know, they're all really kind of well shot, well lit, well acted, maybe with the exception of one. And have a kind of a decent amount of special effects and kind of set pieces and stuff like that. So really all of them, apart from one, I think can fall into that category. There were a couple of standout stories for me. The two that I really enjoyed were the second one, I believe, which is kind of like a Stockholm Syndrome movie. And the reason why I liked it is because it was quite original. One of the conceits I find with anthologies is you always have to have a twist. You know, that's the thing with anthology movies. It's a short story with a twist. And the fact that that's the kind of the format of an anthology makes the twist almost seem pretty much, anticlimactic in a way, because you're kind of expecting it. You're expecting a twist in pretty much every anthology film. So very rarely do I feel that a twist works. However, in this second one, which is this guy and this young boy in this kind of farmhouse, and they're surrounded by what appears to be some type of supernatural creature or creatures, I think is an interesting idea here about kind of how people perceive things, and ultimately kind of Stockholm Syndrome to a degree as well. I thought it was very, very good and original, and I think the twist was something that I thought, that was quite clever. That I applaud because it was quite clever and something I haven't really seen before. The second one, which I quite enjoyed the most, was kind of a possession film. Now that in itself isn't a particularly original movie, and I've got to say the twist, and there is a twist, of course, it kind of is not one that I didn't necessarily see coming. But nonetheless, I still enjoyed it. It was a well-made film, and the twist, it ends on quite a good note, I would say. It's one that I feel is quite satisfactory, and that was, again, it was kind of essentially a truncated kind of exorcist story, and with some reasonable kind of set pieces, and again the production value, the kind of the acting was all pretty good here. And the twist, although it wasn't, mind-blowing, was quite fun as well. There were also a couple of other films that I think were, maybe they're the two standouts for me, that were still pretty good. There's one that involves Amy Smart, which is kind of, I suppose, the biggest actor really, name-wise. And it was pretty good. And again, it was kind of more of a psychological kind of horror, that one, with some pretty decent special effects as well. And the very first story doesn't really have much point, but it was quite fun. I'll say that. And that has it's like a very short film, and that was quite good. Yeah, but they pretty much all have a good production value, and I think if you like anthology movies, the vast majority of here are pretty good. Let me move on to maybe what I didn't like. Now, there was one of the short stories that to me, it didn't necessarily not work, but I did think it was particularly spectacular, and it's the only non-English language one. Now, I will say, I got this movie as a pre-release screener, and the screener that I had does not have any subtitles on it. I don't know if that was an oversight, because generally pre-release screeners are pretty much the final product. But it's a Spanish language movie without any subtitles, and this one is where there's a girl buried underground in a coffin, and she's on the phone to someone. So it's very dialogue driven. So I've got to be honest with you, I didn't really get much from that one. It seems very much like the Ryan Reynolds movie Buried. And obviously because it's primarily all set in a coffin, there's not a hell of a lot of production value there. And it's I don't really know what was going on, to be honest with you, with that one. I kind of maybe put two and two together with there is a twist at the end, and I kind of I guess I can figure out what happened there. But it was pretty much a nothing film to me, that one. It wasn't necessarily bad, but if you've seen, I think it's Buried with Ryan Reynolds, I'm sure that's what it's called. It's kind of like that, and it doesn't really offer anything new, to be honest with you. So I think that it wasn't bad, it certainly wasn't. It's something you've seen before, and they didn't really do anything new with it. And like I've said, I mean, if the final release doesn't have subtitles, there you go. The other negative thing I would say is I think the wraparound story is weak. Now, I'll say this about the wraparound story on the positive. There are still some good production value on this. The location shooting is good, and we do see some special effects, which I think are good and work well. However, the actual conceit of this kind of 100 stories thing does not work for me at all, because people are experiencing clearly supernatural things and they're still carrying on and doing it. And it just is very silly as a conceit. And I also got to say, I think the acting is awful in that section. So we have, I think it's 4 people, and the acting isn't particularly good out of all of those guys. But if we kind of obviously weighing up the positives and negatives, I will say that I do think this probably pips over an average for me, because I do think there are a couple of genuinely good ones and a couple of at least okay ones, and even the things that I don't think are necessarily work certainly don't detract from what works well. So with that in mind, I'll give this particular anthology collection a 6 out of 10. And I think, if you'd like a kind of a more of a well-made, polished kind of horror film, I think this is probably worth a watch. And but I kind of, in a way, I prefer maybe a horror anthology which doesn't have a twist, because it's such a cliche now. If one didn't have a twist, that would be the twist, ironically. So it's a 6 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? Will you see it? Please do leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.